one of my personal favorites. I wanted to say dragon, but it's a sword. A desert vibe is very, very subjective. This one is in a desert vibe setting, which makes it even better, doesn't it? Hello lovely bookworms, I'm Esmay from Paradise of Pages on Instagram and also on Twitter, and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be talking about DesertAthon recommendations, and I have a new stack. So last year I'm not sure how many books I talked about, but I checked and I'm pretty sure I haven't mentioned any of these to you yet, and I thought let's just get into things. I do want to say that a desert vibe is very, very subjective. So what I would call a desert vibe book might not be a desert vibe book for everyone, but I just wanna, let's just go through the list. I do have to say that there's one on here that is not necessarily a huge recommendation, but that's because I feel like this is not for me. It is, however, a true recommendation for certain prompts. I also got a couple of questions about certain prompts. I'm pretty sure someone asked me about like the sword fighting or the sword prompt. I think most of the prompts are pretty straightforward. There's a lot of prompts on here that are not too difficult, and there's a lot of prompts on here that I think are very broad as well. If you have any questions about certain prompts, you can always just message me, because I think it's easier to talk about that way. Otherwise I'd be going over the entire list. But I'm pretty sure there was a prompt someone asked about the sword fighting. Yeah, read a book that has sword fights. And I know that that one is a bit more difficult because of the content. I would also like to add that you can also just read a book that has some type of sword. So if the cover of a book has a sword on it, you can, or some type of dagger, it is pretty easy to think or sort of establish the fact there will probably be some type of sword fighting in there. So I will tackle that one. As for the other ones, just send me a message if you have any questions and you can't figure it out. It should be fine. We can do this, guys. So without further ado, let's just get into book number one. I do have to say that these are in no particular order. Let's just go through them. So the first one I think is my most recent desert vibe read, and that is Markswoman by Rati Marota. Fun fact, I'm actually thinking of reading the sequel for next month. Hopefully I can fit that on a TBR somewhere. And this one already has a sword on the cover, and there's sword fighting in here, so if you want to check that box, this one will fit. And this is basically about a girl named Kira who is part of an organization of markswomen. And these markswomen, or woman, she's a markswoman, they actually establish peace, or they maintain justice. I think that's the best way to call it. And once her journey starts, her mentor actually gets murdered, and that's where her journey starts. I don't want to say too much because I think that it already gives a bit away of the story, which I will not do. And this one's also a pretty quick read, and I think that a lot of you will enjoy this one because it's quick, it's easy, and there's just so much fun in this book. So next up is a book that I've personally not really enjoyed, but I think that quite a few of you would, and that is The Candle and the Flame by Nafisa Azad. This is basically about, how do we even explain this? I think the best way to describe this book is to say that our main character plays a very important role in world peace. This is also a standalone, so if you want a standalone, this will definitely fit that prompt. I do have to say that my issues with this book were the way in which that relationships and love were handled, and also the way in which the main character carried herself. I will not say too much on that aspect, but I think that if you want a true desert vibe book with Ifrit and those kinds of creatures, I think this will definitely be for you. And the cover is also stunning. There's also red on the cover. I know that that is one of the prompts. There's one word in the title. There's fire on the cover as well. So this one will tick a lot of boxes, and I think that it was just not for me, but it's not necessarily a bad book. That's at least what I think. So that is my second recommendation for you. So number 3 is The Last Numara by Kristen Ciccarelli. This one I read a long time ago, and this has to do with someone, her name is Asha. So we follow our main protagonist Asha, who is no other than a dragon slayer. So if that doesn't drag you in, I don't know what will. This one, as you can see, also has I wanted to say dragon, but it's a sword or dagger on the cover, so that one will tick that box. I will now just stop saying it. If you see a sword or some type of weapon, which isn't a bow, on the cover, you're fine. But this one, I think this one was very, very interesting. I love stories with dragons, and our main protagonist is really, really, really nice. She's just so cool. I do have to say that I've never continued this series because the second book, which I have now forgotten the name of, basically follows another character, so you can treat this sort of as a standalone. If you want to continue on, the rest of the series I'm pretty sure will also fall into the desert vibe book type, but I can't tell you anything about those because I haven't continued. This one, however, definitely 5 stars, definitely really, really good read. Alright, we are continuing on to one of my personal favorites. If you've been following me for a while, you know this. I'm obsessed with this book. Weirdly enough, I have not reread it, and that is Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. Yes, that's a weapon on the cover, that's all I'm gonna say. This book, I loved this book. We follow our main protagonist, who is called, what was her name again? Kazi. That was it. Kazi. I was very close. So we follow Kazi, or Kazimira for, well, not for short, for full, and she is part of something called DesertAthon, which is I think a group of warriors, and she has to go somewhere to establish some type of peace. I'm just not going to say too much about this because I think that this book has to be absorbed to the full extent and then just enjoy it. This one was also, comparing it to its size, very quick. I keep saying quickly, but very quick. It is a quick-paced book. I'm gonna stop that now. Quick, Esmay, quick. Come on. And the characters are just so well done. I do have to say that if you read this, don't expect the same amount of love for the second book. I loved this one, and the second book actually made it on my most disappointing list, which is very weird. But this one is worth every minute of your time, especially when looking at the cover. The cover is just absolutely stunning, and I cannot recommend this book enough, or her other books, though I don't think The Kiss of Deception is really desert vibe, but you can definitely fit them in somewhere when it comes to prompts. I do know that especially the third book is a chunker. It's very, very big, so it might not be too suitable for a readathon, but definitely recommend her books, and this one is definitely a desert vibe book in my book. Speaking of chunkers, the next book that I have here is also a pretty recent read for me, and this one definitely gave me a desert vibe, and I also have to say that this book is incredible. I loved it, and that is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This, by the way, can be seen as fire, I think. I think this is definitely like fire on the cover. It's not red, but it's still fire, so if you want to tick that box, there you go. This book is basically, we follow multiple characters, and I'm gonna try not to make this too difficult, but basically what this is about, it's a war between those who want magic back and those who want magic destroyed. In a nutshell, that's what this book is about. It is a chunker, like I said, but it's relatively easy to read, and I think there's also an audiobook, and the audiobook was absolutely perfect. I loved listening to the audiobook. So this one, I can definitely recommend it, and if you want to put a chunker on your TBR for next month, I would definitely recommend this with The City of Brass, but I can't keep recommending that one. You know that at this point. And yes, I absolutely loved this one, and I cannot recommend this enough. So I have 2 more books left on my list, and I think this one is actually Persian inspired, I think. This basically also, if you like the Shatter Me trilogy, I'm pretty sure you will also enjoy this one, and this one is in a desert vibe setting, which makes it even better, doesn't it? And that is Girl Serpentthorne by Melissa Bashardou. I'm so bad with pronouncing names. I can't even pronounce my own name properly. And this one basically follows a girl who's poisonous to the touch, and she is basically concealed in her own garden that she grows. It's the only thing that I believe doesn't wither away under her touch, and basically at the start of the book, her brother and his fiancée come into town, and that's where her story starts. I don't want to say too much about the plot itself because I will definitely be spoiling it. This one was very fun. It's also a standalone, so if you want standalone recommendations, apparently I'm your girl. And this one definitely was an interesting twist on a lot of ideas in books. I loved following along with this. I do have to say that the characters are definitely not the strong suit of this book. It was definitely the plot and the way in which the world was established, which was absolutely phenomenal and just so beautiful. But I think you will really, really enjoy it. And once again, it's very short and has an amazing audiobook. So audiobooks are the way to go, I think. Alright, and then the final book, which basically is 2 recommendations in one because the second book is already out, and that is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nagan. This basically follows a girl who's taken away from her village to be a concubine. I'm not sure if that's the exact word. Yeah, basically she becomes, it doesn't really give a word, but basically she becomes one of the mistresses for the king. And in this world you have different types of people. So you have humans, and then there are, I'm not sure what they are called. Basically they are part of castes, and our main protagonist Lee is part of the paper caste, which is the lowest one, who are mostly human, and I believe that the upper classes are called Moon, the Moon caste, but I'm not entirely sure about that one. It doesn't really state, but this one was very intriguing. It gives me a lot of, there's a lot of vibes in here, but it's just a very, very good book. There's also amazing representation in this one if you're looking for that. Once again, I mean, there's fire in the title, there's, I mean, definitely warm words and fire on titles and fire on covers. The second one is, I wouldn't say just as good, but very good still. I cried my eyes out with the second one, and I cannot recommend this series enough. I feel like this is so underrated, and it definitely deserves more love, so that's why it is in this video as well. It just deserves a lot more love. And I think that you will enjoy this very much. It's fairly small, so it's very easy to read. I also sort of tried, apart from certain books, to get smaller books on here so that it's easier. And this one, I think you will really, really enjoy it. Also, I know that these are all the books that I wanted to talk about, but I have a couple of sort of honorable I can't say this. This is the 6th time that I'm trying this. I have a couple of honorable mentions. There, I got it. Basically, a couple of books that I wanted to recommend to you are certain Agatha Christie books, and then specifically certain Hercule Poirot books. One of them being Death on the Nile. The title itself gives you a desert vibe, but also Murder in Mesopotamia. I think there's Appointment with Death, which also definitely has desert vibes, and there's a couple more. But I would say if you want to read something different from fantasy, I can definitely recommend those. I have read those as well, so that's why I can recommend them to you. They are amazing. In general, Agatha Christie books are amazing, and if you can fit them in, they're really nice as a sort of breath of fresh air. And I think those are all of the books that I wanted to talk about today. I am planning on doing a video about recommendations for books that I haven't read yet. So those that I think would be desert vibed, and those I also sort of plan to read in the near future, but don't know too much about and can't tell you whether they are amazing, in my opinion. So watch out for that as well. I hope that this has already given you quite a bit to work with. If not, there is a recommendation video from last year, which are all different books from the ones I told you today, because I didn't want to just say things twice. There's just a couple of books that I talk about all the time, and you should you probably know at this point, so I didn't talk about those, but they are in last year's video, so if you want to have a bit more of a recommendation there, then you can go there. That said, thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and press that little bell icon so you get post notifications every single time that we post, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye!